Over 100,000 Ugandans are currently earning a living in the Middle Eastern countries, with over 150 companies licensed by the Ministry of Gender, Labor and Social Development to make this possible. As the business of exporting labor continues to become more lucrative, many Ugandan girls are being trafficked to these countries where they end up working in deplorable conditions. Some have lost their lives, while the lucky ones who have returned arrived with horrible stories to tell. But what is driving Ugandans to the Middle East? To discuss this story tonight, I have my guests are Mr. Martin Wandera, Director Labor, Minister of Gender, Honorable Matthias Mpuga, Member of Parliament representing Masaka Municipality, and Mr. Andrew Kameraho, Chairperson, Uganda Association of Recruitment Agencies. But before we get into this discussion, we have this preamble.
As the economy continues to become tougher for many Ugandans, the numbers of those seeking employment opportunities outside the country have increased, with the Middle East being the main destination for many. Many of those who end up in the Middle East have, however, been exposed to many forms of exploitation, and some have even lost their lives due to the difficult working conditions. A new report by Parliament's Committees of Gender and Foreign Affairs reveals that as of 31st August 2017, about 48 Ugandans had died in United Arab Emirates, Oman, Bahrain and Kuwait. These include 34 who have committed suicide, 5 have died of heart attack and cardiac arrest, 2 accidents, 1 septic shock, and 1 HIV complications, among others.
They say that you're going to be paid. The place is a whole palace. It is so big. You're cleaning down, cleaning upstairs, cleaning vehicles, cleaning utensils, you know. From morning up to morning, people are working. And they are not being paid. And they are raped and they are molested, you know. I think we need to wake up as a country.
Statistics from the Uganda Association of External Recruitment Agencies show that there are about 65,000 Ugandans working in the Middle East, mainly as maids, security guards, waitresses, cooks and drivers. According to Moses Binoga, the coordinator of the Anti-Human Trafficking Task Force in the Ministry of Internal Affairs, many of the Ugandans working in the Middle East are trafficked by unlicensed companies through the porous borders with Kenya.
Most of these have been passing through Kenya. They are being taken through all of the various Panya routes, through Kenya, through Malaba, through Busia, through Ruakaka, and sometimes even Majanji on the waters. That's the information, because they
will come tell you they are licensed, but in the real sense they are not. So someone must be able to do due diligence when you're here.
According to the Gender Ministry, only 63 companies are licensed in Uganda to export labor to countries around the world. The report also points to loopholes in enforcing the existing laws on labor export and lack of awareness as some of the challenges facing the export of labor.
So trafficking in persons in this country and in the entire region is becoming too sophisticated to the extent that even the laws are not catching the traffickers, even the enforcers. The issue is out of
Okay, I suppose that story has given us some kind of background of what is happening. And so now I'll introduce again my panelists. I have Mr. Martin Wandera, Director Labor, Minister of Gender. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
I have Mr. Matthias Mpuga, MP, Masaka Municipality.
Thank you, Patrick.
And we have Andrew Kameraho, Chairperson, Uganda Association of Recruitment Agencies.
Thank you, Patrick, and good evening, viewers.
3 of you, we appreciate that you gave us your time, and thank you for honoring our invitation to come and discuss this very important topic. And we know that over 100,000 Ugandans are currently working in the Middle East, and some of them have made money, others have had problems, others have died, but others are thriving. Mr. Andrew Kameraho, you are the Chairperson, Uganda Association of Recruitment Agencies. When you hear a story like what we've just played there of people, 48 people have died, 34 have committed suicide, and of course, I'm sure you'll also be telling me those who have made it. How can we avoid those ugly stories coming from the Middle East affecting our very own?
Well, thank you very much for that question. One, I think the record should be made clear that the number mentioned does not talk about people who are externalized legally. There are many people who go on their own. Some people adventure and try to go out there. Some may succeed and find jobs, but others don't and get frustrated. For one to go to United Arab Emirates, for example, you do not need even to go to the embassy. It is very simple to get a visitor's visa to go to the United Arab Emirates. All one needs to do is to go to a travel agency with a passport, photographs and money. And many Ugandans go. Some go and come back, and others decide to remain there and try to look for employment. And a number of those people had gone through under those circumstances. We looked at that report and we investigated it. And we discovered that only 6 out of the 38 or so had been taken by companies. But even the death did not happen in the period of the 8 months that we talked about. It happened over about, within the period of about 5 years. The 6 people had died in the period of about 5 years. I think that must set the record straight. Otherwise, if somebody is being recruited by a licensed company, there is a process. One, people are interviewed. The employer comes over here or does the interview by Skype. Then the visas are secured, employment visas. These are employment visas, not visit visas. So by the time one leaves the country, they have signed their contracts. There's clearance done by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development. Vetting has been done. The individual is confirmed to be Ugandan, confirmed to be medically fit and not ill, because the companies on the other side do not entertain people who are not medically fit. Because one, that would be a cost on the economy, but also they will not be productive since they're not healthy. So there's a process that you go through, and all this process is monitored, supervised, and regulated by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, that is represented by...
What capacity do you have as a recruitment agency to ensure that if this girl has gone to Bahrain, to Oman, Dubai, or wherever they have gone, you can have some kind of leverage to know that the contract they have signed is not going to be breached? And if they breach it, there's something you can do. What capacity do you have, Andrew, and your other agencies?
There is a mechanism. It's a partnership really between the government and us. This is a mechanism of monitoring. Okay, if we talk about before 2016, you remember in 2016 there was a ban. From January 2016 to July 2017, there was a ban to take out, we're not allowed to take out rather the government imposed a ban on domestic workers, on externalization of domestic workers. And during that period, the Minister then of Labour, Gender, Labour and Social Development, constituted a committee, a ministerial committee. My colleague here, Mr. Martin Wandera, Honorable Martin Wandera, was a member of that committee. That committee came up with measures to streamline the industry. And from then on, there is a monitoring mechanism.
So, but you know that the ban was put because there was a problem.
Exactly.
And this is the problem we're talking about. And do you want to assure Uganda that that problem has been solved entirely?
Largely, yes, it has. Because
okay, just hold on your point there, because I want to bring in the Honorable Matthias Simpuga, because I remember parliamentarians traveled to the Middle East, and some of them came back with gory stories to tell us of things that they saw. I don't know what kind of testimony you could be having, what your colleagues have told you, or even you yourself, you know, about the situation of Ugandan workers in the Middle East.
You know, Patrick, listening to the gory stories of Ugandan victims, so to say, is most scary and speaks volumes about our sensitivity as a people and as a country. In 2016, I rose on the floor of Parliament and raised a motion without notice. The Honorable Martin knows how these motions are brought up. And indeed, my motion was partly carried to the day. In fact, it's that motion that preceded the ban on domestic workers for a certain period of time. We had initially wanted in the motion to investigate these exporters because we believe some of them are involved in human trafficking. and unless it is investigated, we still hold that allegation, and we want it investigated. Members of Parliament that have been to the Middle East, including members of the Committee of Gender, then Human Rights, have told Parliament very, very good stories of these people. And I do not know whether, as a country, there's anything left about us and our dignity. One of the most scary situations was that when members of Parliament went to investigate one of the camps where Ugandans are herded like animals and bargained for by their supposed employers.
Bargained for?
Certainly.
Are you talking about like a modern day kind of market for human beings in the Middle East?
I am choosing my words with care because I know what they imply. And I will need the assurance of these colleagues here that I have to choose another word other than bargain. We have stories of Ugandans bargaining for like animals, and indeed, it's like an auction market. There's a total violation of all manner of regulations. Patrick, you're aware that we have regulations that relate to exportation of Ugandans abroad, made in 2005. And one of the key ingredients therein is that for you to be able to export Ugandans for work, you must be licensed. And the other attendant sub-regulations, including exporting labor when you have a recruitment order. When a company or an agency or the government has given you an order and that order is verifiable, that somebody wants 10 workers of various skills.
But I would want also to know whether the members of Parliament that visited also came back with stories of those other Ugandans who are thriving in the Middle East.
You see, when you find something as terrible as auctioning Ugandans, it really it puts aside anything beautiful about the entire activity. There's no space for beauties when such stories are told. There's nothing like. That's why actually, despite you did describe it as lucrative, and I was going to ask you, lucrative on whose side? Lucrative to the exporter, lucrative to those employed. It could also be true that there are some Ugandans who have gained something out of this. But the question of the day, must those that have succeeded, whether more than those who have failed, hide away the fact that there are some individuals or agencies, I'm not trying to really impute anything on anybody or an agency, unless an investigation is properly done. But as long as we're in the air, that some agencies and individuals are involved in human trafficking and auctioning of Ugandans in slave markets in the Middle East, as long as it's not been resolved by a proper investigation, it remains a very serious allegation on the ministry, on the agencies, and they must come clean.
Let me bring in here Mr. Martin Wandera, because you are Director Labour, and this is right in your docket. When you hear stories like these, it's an indictment on the Ministry of Gender, but a scar on the conscience of the nation. How would you respond to that?
Yeah, thank you very much, Mr. Kamara. Indictment, yes. Fair indictment, I don't think so. And I am not speaking merely just as a public officer who is responsible for labor, but I speak as a scholar of migration. Now, the point that I want to make is that the story of migrant workers in space and time has been one of vulnerable people who often are exploited. And the challenge, however, that has been that in many cases, it has been difficult to stop people from migrating, especially where there are pull factors, as is the case in our situation. For example, let's talk of a domestic worker. The wage in the UAE is about 1.2 million shillings. In Saudi, about 900,000 shillings or 1 million. Now, people will be attracted to that. As Mr. Kamera has told you, on the 22nd of January 2016, we imposed a ban. Do you know what the unintended consequence was? Trafficking thrived. We do not clear domestic workers to countries with whom we do not have a bilateral agreement. Records from the Ministry of Human Resources and Emiratization of the UAE show there are 10,000 Ugandans engaged in domestic work. We have close to 40,000 in Oman. We don't clear anybody. Now, what we try to do at the ministry is a response to the awareness that migrant workers are vulnerable. And we therefore try to create a safe window, a safe pathway. Because whether you impose a ban today, people will go. Now, the responsibility of government is to make sure that if you can't stop something, regulate it and make it safe. And that's what our intervention is.
So for those
there's been a story, just
bilateral
listen, there's been,
agreement.
in the media round and social media, there's been a story, I'm sorry to talk about her, a one Doreen. My sympathies to her and her family. But just imagine if she had not traveled through a licensed company, the story would have been different. And it is for stories like this that we continue to do everything to make sure that we put in place a safe pathway for people to travel abroad.
But let me ask you, even if you have a bilateral agreement with Saudi Arabia or Jordan or whatever country the Ugandans are going to, what kind of control do you have? I mean, how do you prepare them for the culture shock? How do you prepare them for the language barrier? How do you prepare them for all these things when you're here at the Ministry of Gender? Anything can just happen as so long as they get off that plane and touch down in Jordan or somewhere in Saudi.
Now, first, let me say this. And my brother, Honorable Mpuga, spoke about it. The recruitment process starts with a demand order or a job order from the prospective recipient country. In the case of Saudi Arabia, where we have a bilateral, all job orders are vetted to establish their genuineness. And actually, before we reopened in 2017, we had to get a list of all licensed companies in Saudi Arabia. And as I speak now, we know their address, and by Google Map, we are able to trace where all of these are. So they issue a job order. It is assessed by the embassy in Riyadh and then cleared by our ministry. We look at the terms and conditions of service, the wage, whether there will be health coverage, and other things, and the salary. Now, after that has been done, the company is authorized to recruit. But before workers travel, from 2017, we introduced mandatory pre-departure orientation and training. And one of the intentions of this training was to assist these workers with cross-cultural adjustment. They are told about the culture in the country where they are going. They are told about the challenges they are likely to face. They are psychologically prepared. But most importantly, their motivation to travel is discussed. Because part of the challenge has been, if you have a goal of getting capital of 1 million shillings, then you sign a contract of a year or 2 years. After 1 year, after 2 months, you have achieved your goal and you want to come back. But there is a contract. Even here, you don't simply walk away from work under Employment Act. You know, you must give notice if you want to leave.
You know, Mr. Andrew Kameraho, people have been sexually assaulted, they have been abused, they have not, sometimes their salaries have been withheld, They found themselves with big workloads that they were not prepared for. And you know, the gory images have appeared on our phones of how people have suffered. It's like modern day kind of slavery in the Middle East, even though you have areas where people have succeeded. You cannot say that whoever has suffered in the Middle East, maybe they have taken the porous borders and crossed the country. Some have gone through agencies like where you are the chairman.
Okay, thank you for that question. I think the bottom line is the process, how the process begins and how it is. Because you have contracts. In contracts, there are obligations on each side, on either side, on both parties. And in these contracts, it is very clear that these workers must be protected under the laws. The law in Saudi Arabia, for example, or the law in United Arab Emirates, but also the international law, international labor law. And the contracts were reviewed by both countries. You know, for example, if you talk of Saudi Arabia, there is a bilateral labor agreement between Saudi Arabia and Uganda. Now, the contracts are derived from that main agreement. And these contracts are there to be binding. So that is number one. Number two, there is a monitoring mechanism. The monitoring mechanism is there to ensure that if somebody has a problem, then that problem is addressed. We have a labor liaison officer based in Riyadh who is in charge of supervising to ensure supervising the
in the entire Middle East.
Yes. No, not in that Middle, because you have an embassy in UAE that takes part of the Middle East. You have another embassy in Saudi Arabia. So there are two embassies, for Uganda, and they are all involved in supervising and ensuring that Ugandans are protected. Yes, we have 150,000 people currently working in the Middle East. You know, now we cannot say that out of 150,000 people, you not get somebody whose rights will be infringed upon. They could be infringed upon, but the most important thing
according to your records, how many people do we have that have gone officially through the labor recruiting agencies that are licensed by the Ministry of Gender?
Close to 70,000.
Yeah, close to half the number.
So you have a population of almost an entire municipality
yes,
that has gone out of the country without the knowledge of the government agencies, the department and ministries.
Some, of course, left earlier. Some left before even the unit under the ministry, the externalization unit under the ministry was established. Because this unit was only established in 2005. But even before that, there were Ugandans there.
So, Honorable Matthias Mpuga, we have about 70,000 that this country can actually not really sort of account for. They have gone out. They have maybe used the porous borders. Probably they have been, trafficked. But 70,000 is quite a big number. In some of these small towns, that is a population of an entire town with an MP representing it, gone out of Uganda.
You know why I would insist on a proper inquest is for every agent's license to account for the people they have so far, for example, exported. To really explain where they are, where they know their conditions, because we have stories. We had today from Parliament, from a honorable member, on the floor of Parliament today, of Ugandans who were stuck at airports in Oman and other places. So we would like to know, we would like to really ask of each of these agencies to account for the Ugandans they have so far taken out. Here, for example, I've heard stories of Ugandans buried in the sands, in the deserts, and nobody can account for them. This cannot simply go away and we explain it in semantics of procedures and stuff. These are very, very serious allegations.
Hold on to your point there. Let me call for a short clip from the Honorable Betty Namboze, who is, I think, a shadow minister for local government, if I'm correct, so that we get to know what she has to say and the other members of parliament who have also visited the Middle East. Let me ask my producer to play a clip of Honorable Betty Namboze.
Some of them are charged money by the exporters here. Others are not charged. They are given visitors' visas. When they are taken there, they are again handed over to another company, a company that keeps them in smaller places at their offices. where they are paraded for buyers. A person comes and bargains to purchase a girl.
Do we have a system of informing our embassies where the children are taken? Do they have a system of knowing where they are, who has come, where they have been taken, so that they keep track of these people? Can't we have a system? Please, is it so difficult to have a system?
Mr. Martin Wandera, that expose from Honorable Betty Namboze is gut-wrenching. It's really bad.
Now, before I respond to what Honorable Namboze has said, my brother Honorable Mpuga said, and perhaps rightly so, that there are Ugandans in distress, some stranded at airports in places like Oman. I want to repeat, we do not clear anyone to go to Oman. These people go on their own. They get visit visas, tourist visas, and just like anyone who is seeking a livelihood. So whereas the government remains accountable for them because they are citizens, I think people who want to seek opportunities abroad should seek for safer pathways. I want to repeat, even workers who go through licensed companies will get into distress. But the advantage they have is that they are traceable for consular services. I can confidently say that all workers who have gone through companies can be traced. Because whenever there is a complaint and we contact the companies, we always find these people. But the advantage that is there also, at licensing, these companies give the ministry a bank guarantee of 50 million. Not cash. People watching might think I have 50 million from 150. No, they give us paper. Now, if the company fails to make good its commitment, for example, wages are not paid, someone is in distress and they can't be repatriated, we redeem the guarantee and pay. So that the point I'm making is that yes, everyone can get into distress, but for someone who goes through the formal channels, there is an opportunity to have someone to hold accountable. The other thing that my sister Honorable Namboze spoke about was that some are given visitors' visas. I would like to categorically state that all workers cleared through the formal channel must have a worker's visa. And anyone who is traveling for work on a tourist visa is supposed to be denied exit. And many have been denied. I just received a report from our officer at Entebbe International Airport. And in the month of June alone, 462 workers who had not been cleared through the ministry were offloaded. So you can see, whereas the country is saying there are problems abroad.
All these 400?
Yes.
Are you saying they did not have any connection with the recruitment agencies?
No, they did
that
not.
Are licensed
they
to
did
That's
not.
my question.
They did not have any connection with the recruitment agents. Because we are very strict. If we find a company, there will be wrong apples trying to externalize outside the system. They know what the price is.
Mr. Kameraho, we know Ugandan missions abroad themselves are struggling. They don't have everything that they need. In some cases, they don't even have transport. We have heard the story of the Ugandan missions. They are struggling. And you want to rely on them. And you're saying you're sending somebody to monitor. And you're working with the embassy. The embassy is probably in a few countries in the Middle East, not everywhere. That alone puts you in a very disadvantageous position.
No, I think the main asset there is communication. Because if there is a problem if there's a problem in one area and the center is informed, you know, the central office, the coordination office is informed by WhatsApp or email, then action can be activated, even from our side. If there's need for a ticket for somebody to come, that ticket can be procured and sent to the person who needs it. So what is most important is
have you been able to secure tickets and return some people who have been in trouble?
Oh yes, we do that regularly. That is routine. Some may not even be in trouble, but they may want to come back. You know, some may say, I have lost somebody, I need to get back, and you know, we make arrangements and they come back. There are circumstances that you must consider for return, even before the contract is completed. So that is routine. People come back even when they have they're not under stress, under distress. They still come back, and we make arrangements for that. So the most important thing is the coordination mechanism. We have a monitoring and coordination mechanism that is best. It is digitalized. Okay. Everything is uploaded.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'll be asking who owns these recruitment agencies, what kind of leverage do they have on the ministry and the government. We'll be right back. Welcome back. You're watching On the Spot. My name is Patrick Amara. My guests tonight are Honorable Matthias Mpuga, Mr. Martin Wandera, and Mr. Andrew Kamera. We're discussing the fate of Ugandan employees or workers in the Middle East. I think I have to put it to you as a member of parliament that since you are the other third arm of government, you need to do more.
Yes, I must confess that parliament has struggled with this back and forth. And if you check the answer, the records are very clear that this matter has come through several committees of parliament, and we don't seem to get to the end of this. Then you get the sense that perhaps, I don't want to use the word cover-up. I can borrow the phrase that the entire exercise is blood in some kind of mystery that we need to really uncover and appreciate. If this is a good thing, we shall all support it. By the way, from the word go, we want our people to go and work because there's a crisis of jobs here. There's no doubt about that. Bear in mind the fact that these are young people and mostly young graduates from across the country that are trying to eke out a living in very difficult conditions, in very different culture, facing culture shocks and all manner of challenges, weather, food and stuff. But you see, the issue that we want to understand, for example, I will ask the Honorable Martin Wandera to tell viewers how many countries does Uganda have bilateral agreements with? Because he's saying there are people that are in countries that they do not know. They don't have agreements with them. You discover that some of your viewers will then know that there are agencies that are taking people to countries where there are no bilateral agreements, and therefore have to roll back on some of their activities or question reason why they are there and how they went they got up there. So we really need to understand who are these. Secondly, I don't know whether the ministry has enough lenses to see through the activities of the agency they license. I get the feeling that perhaps some of the agencies are double dealers. They're both official and unofficial. They engage in officialdom where there are bilateral agreements, but also turn around and export or traffic, for that matter, in countries where there are no bilateral agreements. I'm not trying to accuse the chairperson of the agencies, but I don't know how much leverage and control he has over his these groups that have the potential of having in their ranks, you know.
So you as members of parliament, when you're raising these issues of parliament, and maybe when members of parliament are going to the Middle East to investigate and see how the children are faring there, did you bother also to find out probably the owners of these recruitment agencies? Because I'm asking this because there could be a conflict of interest. There could be somebody in the ministry, somebody in the government, or even, you know, somebody who has so much de facto power that he could be holding the ministry on joystick.
Patrick, I am on record on the answer to having raised a motion trying to remove the veil on these agencies. it did not succeed. I don't know why, but I believe the happenings should be able to bring back the necessity to have a motion to perhaps remove the veil on these companies. I believe they're doing a good job, and this good job we want to appreciate by understanding who they are, because they're doing this job on our behalf. We want to understand them better. I believe now the shenanigans about what they're doing and the questions not answered should be able to elicit a collective appreciation of Parliament to understand who these agencies are. Like, I'm trying to imagine that perhaps Mr. Wandela and his team do not have enough lenses to through some of the opaque operational areas of these agencies. For example, I'm eager to know how many countries they are officially operating.
Okay, Honorable Martin Wandela.
First question, bilateral agreements. We have signed 3 bilateral agreements. First, with the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, then the Hashemite Kingdom of Jordan, and most recently, we signed with the United Arab Emirates. But I would like to clarify that even in countries where we do not have bilateral agreements, the non-vulnerable categories can go. We've negotiated with Qatar, but we've not signed. We don't have one with Bahrain. Until recently, we didn't have one with UAE, but would clear drivers, technicians, security guards. Those would clear. Medical staff would clear, but we do not clear domestic workers for a country where we do not have a bilateral agreement. Now, traffickers, yes, it's correct. The traffickers are operating along in parallel with.
So for the countries where you don't have bilateral agreements, you can clear what you've called the non-domestic workers.
Yeah, non-domestic workers.
Non-domestic workers.
Yes.
But the rest you can take a gamble.
No, it's not about, because it has not been a gamble, because if you look at reports.
Because there's a reason why you sign a bilateral agreement, because it gives you, I suppose, some kind of level of control.
Yes,
but when that one is not there,
it enhances your capacity.
Yes, but lack of that enhancement, then
protect.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. For the other countries, you take a gamble.
A gamble, but look, if you look at the complaints that come through, do you ever get any complaints about the non-domestic workers? The majority are fine. They will have challenges.
You know, Patrick, one of the complaints is that these people are shortchanged on arrival. You go as a driver, and then you turn out to be a domestic worker. There are these complaints also that people go to these countries and shortchanged because the agencies do not really have, as long as they have been paid their check for exporting these individuals, they don't care what you do when you reach there. It's one of the complaints, which is why a proper inquest into what these agencies are doing and who they're dealing with, for me, would solve the problem.
Now, if there is anyone out there whose contract was substituted, you are recruited as a driver, and then when you got to UAE, you got some other job, please report to the ministry. But the majority in that category, those who suffer contract substitution, are those placed by traffickers. I know the companies are not angels, but the majority try to abide by the law because we are very strict. The other point that I would like to respond to is the one of regulatory capture. First of all, the Constitution of Uganda allows everyone to engage in business, regardless of your height, regardless of the political position you hold.
Lawful business.
As long as it is lawful business. So the issue of saying that there are big people in this who have captured us is not correct. The 150 companies are witnesses. In terms of regulation, we treat these companies equally. No company is licensed without providing income tax returns, without providing a bank guarantee, and all other requirements. That one is known. And if it expires, for example, we operate the external employment management information system. If your license expires, the system shuts you down. So, however small or big you are, your job order can't be approved. So you can't talk about regulatory capture. But I would also like to speak to our members of parliament. I think the way you engage with your constituents, sit with them and understand their problems. I think it is important that parliament changes the way it deals with the ministries, departments and agencies. Because whenever you go to parliament, it is a quasi-court. They never get time, and I know a bit of parliament. MPs never get time to understand what is happening. I would like a situation where I'm given 3 hours uninterrupted to explain to them. They come, walk around the ministry, they look at the records and see what we are doing. If they did that, they will realize that there are many things that are happening. But whenever you appear, you are confronted by the question, 48 people died. So there is no time to explain what is happening. And I say this with the greatest of respect.
But you also know, as people's
for example,
representatives...
For example, the 48 people who died, let me tell you.
As people's representatives, when
Yes.
they are confronted by their constituents,
Yes.
asking them about 34 people have committed suicide,
Yes.
48, those are hard questions. They are transferring the same frustration that is brought to them to you.
But let me tell you,
or whoever is responsible.
being privileged does not mean you do not carry out research. You must interrogate everything. For example, this list of 48. It is online. Let anyone go online and Google 48 Ugandans die in UAE. You will find the list and their DA passports on that list. And the heading is migrant workers who have died in UAE. Now, a DA passport, he knows, is a diplomatic passport. No migrant worker holds a diplomatic passport, and there are 2 diplomatic passports on that. They're on that list. So when we investigated, as he said, we found 6. Only 6 had been.
But you know, until recently, the Ugandan passport was really being questioned around the world. So we don't want to get into the issues of
No, but these are known.
No,
Yeah,
but
see,
look here. That puts to question the credibility of that list. Because you cannot call them migrant workers. And there are people,
the credibility of the Ugandan agencies has also been questioned all along.
For the sake of respecting the dead, I will not mention some of those people. But there is someone who was an undersecretary on that list of migrant workers who died in UAE. So, there are problems, but it is important that we try to be realists.
Okay, Mr. Andrew.
When we are dealing with this matter.
Andrew.
You know, Patrick, he's making a very
I-
serious indictment of Parliament, and I find it a bit unfair. When Parliament raises these questions, Parliament is questioning the collective existence of government. If we have passports that are of a diplomatic nature being held by migrant workers that haven't been defined, and they are Ugandan passports, of course, the questions are not person holder. Perhaps that question must be answered by somebody, but also in government. So members of Parliament have a duty to interrogate these matters, and perhaps the question is not person holder that must be to answer it. If it relates to immigration or to internal affairs issuing passports, it's a very serious indictment and abuse of a Ugandan passport and must be answered. About death, any death must be explained. Whatever, if even a death of cattle is questioned in Parliament. How about death of human beings alleged to be Ugandans? It might be questioned, and somebody, not necessarily you, somebody must answer to any death of a Ugandan anywhere.
Okay.
That's why countries have governments.
Andrew,
They can't run away from that.
Yes,
Mr. Kamero, with great respect to my friend, if I died tomorrow in Dubai, I hold a GA passport. Would it be fair to categorize me among migrant workers who have died in the UAE. Then, again with Parliament, and I want us to be fair. There is more that parliamentarians need to know. For example, if I assume Honorable Mpuga to explain the process of licensing, the process of vetting, how many members of Parliament can do it? But for over 10 years,
do you want me to take you through it right here? That's what you want? And can I ask you whether you have vetted contracts for all these people out there? You monitor these contracts and how they're performed?
No, I've
do you monitor? No, I'm trying to take you through in a simple educative terms to show you that you're talking about
because one of the requirements is having
certainly you're talking about basic things.
Anyway, but let's not go too.
These are primary things that really you must know.
You see, you need more.
Okay, let's leave that ping pong. Let me, Mr. Andrew Kameraho. I have heard people who say, you know, there's almost some kind of extortion from those agencies. The money they require, you know, you go to get what they call a certificate of good conduct from Interpol and all these things. They are paying through the nose. Why do you have to make them?
Yes or no. There are some cases where people have to pay, and there are other areas where people do not have to pay. But before I go there, I also want to mention that if the situation was so bad, we would not have all these numbers there. One, these people who live in this country have relatives and friends back home. And many of the candidates we get have been advised by their own relatives and friends to come back, to come to us and get going. So, you know, there's communication. If the situation was so bad, people will not go, because they are not compelled to go. Let's first clear that ground. When they arrive there, we get phone calls. People are calling you and say, please, you brought me here the other day. My sister is there, my brother is there, try and help them to come. If the situation was that bad, they wouldn't do that. That is number one. Now I'll come to actually what he was saying, what Honorable Mpuga was saying about contracts. I think the director has explained, you must have a contract. That contract must be verified. You must have a job order, it's approved. There is nothing that is opaque. Everything is as transparent as this glass. So people should not worry. The only problem is the distinction between traffickers and licensed companies.
Gentlemen, we're going to take a break, and when we come back, I'll open the line so that Ugandans are watching here in Uganda or anywhere. Sometimes we get calls actually from United Arab Emirates and Jordan and Dubai. You can tell us what you think, and maybe we'll also be looking into the remittances that we get from Ugandans working in the Middle East. I know for sure that those who are thriving and making money, but we are concerned about those who have suffered. We'll be right back. Welcome back, gentlemen. We're back on air. Welcome back on the spot. My name is Patrick Kamara. Guest tonight are Martin Wandera, Matthias Mpuga, and Andrew Kameraho. We're discussing the externalization of labor, and specifically in the area of the Middle East. Well, are we able to know how much money, in terms of remittances, that we are getting from that specific area of the Middle East?
600 million US dollars.
Annually.
Honorable Martin, Honorable Mpuga, that's colossal sums of money. Government could actually use that kind of money that has come into the economy in different ways to make sure you streamline everything.
Well,
because if you have $600 million coming in, more than half, that's more than 1 trillion Uganda shillings.
Yeah, or about that. But for me, it could even be better if we took off time to get this program or project much more streamlined. There are other countries elsewhere that actually export labor, but they are smarter in their doings. You heard of the Cubans, doctors, engineers, and what? Cuba is one of the countries that really exports a lot of labor to different countries, to the Americas, in another country, Latin America. But for you to get their people, you really must work with the government and in an organized manner. The challenge here is the haphazard official, we see we have window 1 and window 2 operating in Uganda, and in some cases I suspect both operate on the same desk, and this is the challenge. And when this happens, you end up with this kind of mess we're discussing. We need to move in an area. You're right. If the Ministry of Gender could move much matter to try and align this program much better, move in those areas, for example, where you do not have bilateral agreements, and move fast, because Ugandans are eager to go. The challenges at home are vivid for everyone to see. So what are we waiting for to have these bilateral agreements signed? But you see, the other challenge is that some of these contracts that companies sign and send their Ugandans to work are not supervised. So can we have a mechanism where contracts are signed, where people work for hours agreed upon in the contracts, paid sums agreed upon, money is remitted as agreed, so that this becomes even more lucrative, not only to the individuals involved, but also the country. So when we leave it to market forces of anarchy, it's not demand and supply. So it's real anarchy. We are discussing death. We're not discussing demand and supply. We're discussing partial slavery and partial anarchy.
So, Mr. Mandela, when the Honorable Namboze and the other members of Parliament go on the floor of Parliament, of the House, and state that they saw almost a modern-day kind of slavery market where Ugandans are being purchased, you think they told a lie?
I cannot say they told a lie, but it is for that very concern that there is a formal pathway. Because if you go through unlicensed agents, the chances that you end up in serious distress is high. Because as I said at the beginning, can we stop people from going? You can't. I can tell you the way night follows day. We tried it, and the unintended consequence was that trafficking thrived. It is rule of the thumb. If you can't stop something, especially like migration, regulate it and make it safe, regular, formal, and productive. And this is the ship that we are building as we sail. If you look at pre-2016, the situation was different. Anyone from Saudi Arabia, for example, would come here and recruit. Arising out of the engagement that we have had with the government of Saudi Arabia, only licensed companies from Saudi Arabia that have been vetted by the government of Uganda can recruit from here. And because of that, traceability is easier, access to consular services is easier. So I would like to urge all listeners out there, if you have chosen that you will earn a livelihood from abroad, you are safer if you go through a formal channel.
And Andrew, you are chairperson, Uganda Association of Recruitment Agencies. I wonder, about over 150 or so. Are you really in control? Do you really know those agencies, what they, if they veer off from their agreed principles? Would you tell? Would you be able to bring them to order?
Yes, to some extent, because we have a code of conduct, and everybody must sign and agree to the code of conduct. Because once they are licensed by the Ministry of Gender, Labour and Social Development, then they become members of UERA, our association. And we have a code of conduct. So we subject them to this code of conduct. However, if there is anybody, any company that contravenes our code, then we inform the ministry. Then the ministry, of course, as a regulator, the ministry being the regulator, are able to take action according to the law and the regulations. Now, talking about remittances, an area that you touched earlier on and has been touched by the colleagues here, the honorable colleagues here. Uganda is not actually the major player, is not even among the major players in this business, in this industry. You have countries like India, the remittances are $80 billion annually. China, 75 billion. The Philippines, 35 billion In Africa here, the biggest beneficiary is Nigeria, of course, with also a bigger population of about 200 million. They get 22 billion from remittances. Egypt gets about 10 billion. Ethiopia, 5 billion. Uganda, we only get 1.4 billion from all over the world. But out of this, 600 million comes from the Middle East. So we are there, we are getting there. Of course, this is an improvement from 3 years ago. 3 years ago, we were still under 1 billion, but now we're at 1.4 from all over the world. So we're making progress. And again, at the same time, we're also making progress in as far as streamlining is concerned. And we think that going forward, the situation is going to ameliorate.
I'm going to be opening the lines so that Ugandans who are watching can be able to, you'll see the numbers on the screen. You can pick your phone and call us. Please be precise and concise so that you can have a number of views. And this program is not against people having jobs abroad. They should, because we live in a country and in a generation that has no jobs. And we need to get the jobs. We're only saying people, those who have suffered, we are questioning why. What went wrong and how can we solve those problems. But it is important for people to work and to find the jobs wherever they are around the world, only that those people, Ugandans, should not be abused, because we think they should get jobs with dignity and not to be abused.
Hello.
And yes, we have a call online.
Hello, Kamala.
Good evening, sir. What's your name?
I'm Byron now, calling from Mbarara.
You're on air, Byron.
So, my biggest question to these big government officials,
yes,
is have they tried to send their sisters, relatives to Middle East? Why have they tried to ask themselves why Middle East is the problem? Why can't they ban labor export?
Yeah, but there are no jobs in Uganda. There are about 150,000 people working in the Middle East alone, and that's almost an entire population of Mbarara municipality.
But now, if Middle East has got a problem, why can't they ban all routes to Middle East? Why can't we try maybe America? Why can't we try Cuba and these other places?
Okay, maybe Mr. Andrew Kamera will respond to that later, but I'll also be taking some other calls. I just want to say working abroad is okay, and it's important people should get jobs so that money can come into the economy. $1.5 billion in remittances, that's a lot of money. That is even bigger than a budget for many other ministries. If you look at our budget, it was only $12 billion, I think, of 2019, 2020. So if money was 1.5, we have a caller online. Hello? 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 Okay. I think probably you could respond to that caller from Mbarara.
The Middle East, why the Middle East? Yes, Middle East, first of all, they have...
okay. Yes, what's your name and where are you calling from?
I'm called Noah.
Yes, Noah, you are on air.
Yes, please. My concern is that... Hello?
Yes, go right ahead.
I'm like... The way I'm seeing the gentlemen in charge of, the heads of these
recruitment agencies.
Yes. They look to be so defensive. Yet these are problems that we are seeing happening. So really, let them have a parental kind of heart when it comes to these things. They are so serious. People are dying. And you cannot tell us, we have been watching videos where girls are telling us they came through, they went to those areas through companies that are registered. So you cannot tell us that, no, these people go through, is it Kenya, what, and so on. These are registered companies taking these girls outside there. Yeah?
Right.
And we are seeing them, really. Let's have a heart of, let's be parental in terms of when we're answering some of these things. Let's not be so defensive to this extent.
All right, thank you very much. Andrew was trying to respond to a question before another person came in.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Kamara. The Middle East, why the Middle East? This question is asked quite often. Middle East has a low density in terms of population. The population is low, and the economies are growing sufficiently and they require to be, the economy requires migrant workers. That is one. But two, the government has laws, policies to attract migrant workers. This is, I think, the only part of the world that I know that has as a elaborate system, an elaborate mechanism to attract workers to come into their countries. They have ministers in charge of these departments, and they provide, it is very easy, for example, to get visas. Once the company applies for visas, because it's the companies there who apply for the visas, the employment companies, those who employ our workers, they apply for visas in bulk. They can send a block visa of 50 people at once, 100 people at once. I don't think you can get that kind of visa, that kind of visa from anywhere else. People talk about Canada, they talk about Australia. I'm thinking those people who talk about those countries, are not genuine. But in the Middle East, it's very easy to travel and go and work, because the visas are offered by government according to the demand of a particular employer that needs workers. So there are policies and there are jobs. These jobs are demand driven. The externalization is demand driven. We move to the Middle East, we take people to the Middle East simply because there are jobs there, genuine jobs with systems in place, put in place particularly for attraction of migrant workers. That is the Middle East. Now, when it comes to companies being defensive, yes, I mean, if you come and say something that is not correct, there's no way we can accept. We must be able to say, for example, you give evidence. If there is a company that has taken people and they are suffering, then you can report to the Minister of Labor. The Minister of Labor is here. They are our regulators, and they will take action against that company. And then the person who is suffering will be assisted. The matter will be addressed. That person will be assisted, and if necessary, returned back home.
Okay, I'm going to open the lines once again, probably take one or two more callers, so that the panelists on the show tonight will be making their concluding arguments. Hello? Good evening, ma'am.
Hello?
Yes, good evening. You are on air. I have
good evening.
I have a caller online and you are on air, ma'am. We can hear you loud and clear. Okay. That's unfortunate. I don't know what happened, but so you can see the numbers on the screen. Please pick a phone and call us and be precise and concise. And the other trick is that if the phone has gone through, please turn down the volume of your TV set so that it doesn't cause an echo, which cannot. This is exactly what I'm trying to avoid. Hello?
Hello?
Yes, good evening, sir. What's your name?
My name is Innocent Isoke.
Innocent Isoke, you're on air.
Yes, actually, I'm asking the gentleman in the studios that what have the government done for companies actually who are registered, but they've taken daughters of this land, but when they reach there, they actually get mistreated, but has the government done anything, like, to punish these companies, maybe revoke their licenses, or what?
So you are saying that there are some registered companies which are not working according to agreed principles, right?
Absolutely.
All right, we'll have Mr. Wandera respond to that.
Another thing. Actually, they claim that most of us are taken by unlicensed companies.
It's a pity we have lost that line that was connecting us to Mr. Isoke there. Okay, just one more caller, and then my guests will give us their final arguments on this issue. Hello? Hello? We have a call online. Hello? Okay, I'm closing those calls. There's a ticket. Hello?
Good evening.
Good evening, sir. What's your name and where are you calling from? All right. I think I have a problem with the network, and my apologies for that. Yes, Mr. Wandera, sir.
Yeah. We have a very strict compliance regime. especially when it comes to protecting the rights of workers. One of the licensing requirements is an undertaking to protect the rights of these migrant workers. And wherever there is a breach, we take action, which includes suspension of document processing. For a company that has job orders and you suspend document processing for a month, that is a lot of money that is lost. We suspend companies, we delicense. And I think sometime at the end of last year, we published in the press companies that we had suspended. And if you're a business person and you are cast in the public through the press as an errant company, that has a very big impact. And now, since then, companies are very, very careful. But that does not mean to say that the companies are entirely clean, but that's why we maintain our monitoring mechanism.
Okay. All right. Our time is out. Let me begin with you, Honorable Matthias Mpuuga, to give your concluding remark.
You know, Patrick, this conversation is good to have. I guess not coming late when we've lost a lot. I guess it's timely for all that are concerned with realigning this sector. I contend that there are lots of violations on the part of those that are supposed to protect Ugandans. I don't want to say that the ministry is sleeping on duty, but this kind of conversation must awaken the ministry and all concerned, including those in charge of migration, internal affairs, that are issued to have a document and all that, to really wake up and perform their duty to the country. And I don't think that would do anybody service by living in denial of realities. We've seen Ugandans coming back in all manner of trouble. All we need to know is to know who is responsible for this, which is why, for me, what will settle matter at the end of the day is a properly done inquest into this sector.
Thank you.
And that will settle the nerves of those that are saying that somebody is abusing the sanctity of humanity.
Mr. Wandera.
Yes, to all countrymen and women, I would like to say that where we have not lived to your expectations, I would like to apologize and take responsibility as the person who is responsible. But I would like to say that my officers, our officers, put in a lot to make sure that this industry is streamlined and to make sure that the rights of these workers are protected. In closing, I would like to say that given that we cannot at the moment stop migration, our duty is to make migration safe, regular, formal and productive. And that's what our ministry is doing every day. As the Baganda say, Gachali Mabaga. We have done so much, but there is still so much to be done.
Mr. Andrew Kameraho, your parting shot.
Thank you, Mr. Patrick Kamara, for availing us the opportunity to come here and exchange ideas on this important subject. I also thank my colleagues, the honorable colleagues here, for their contribution. It is important for us to continue sensitizing the public about externalization of labor. And it is also important to distinguish between externalization of labor and human trafficking. Because the issues that were being raised by Honorable Mpuuga here, Matthias Mpuuga, are issues that used to happen 3 or 4 years back. As we talk now, the process of streamlining is continuing. It continues. And there's a huge difference. Because the numbers have increased, whereas the cases of complaints have reduced.
Okay.
That clearly shows that there's a lot being done. And the benefits out of this are enormous. People are investing, they have generated capital, they have acquired skills, they are helping back their homes, paying school fees, and all this should be really appreciated and encouraged other than being opposed.
Andrew
Thank you.
Kameraho, thank you very much. Mr. Martin Wandera, thank you very much, and Honorable Matthias Mpuga. We appreciate your insights on the matter. And I should also state again, this show on the sport and for sure the entire NTV is not against people working abroad. But what we are saying is that those who are afflicted, those who are hurting, their stories must be exposed, and want to ask question why. And we agree that migration should be safe, should be regular, should be formal, and should be productive. Good night, and God bless Uganda.